Final Fantasy XIV is the best game in the series to date, thanks to its expansions that quite literally expand the world, the relatable cast, and a Guinness World Record-sized soundtrack that never skimps on the creativity. But during mainstream marketing for these expansions, they rarely take the opportunity to actually show off the game.
You can become the warrior of darkness. Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. Pre-order today, available July 2nd.
No.
This has been a big complaint at E3, where games would get announced, show off flashy pre-rendered trailers, and then say, please get excited. I mean, what even is Deathloop? But even with that said, these complaints are seldom directed at Square Enix, and that's for one very good reason. It's because the visuals work. Other companies often ask outside contractors to create these sorts of pre-rendered trailers. For instance, that Deathloop trailer wasn't created at Arcane Studios, it was done by an animation team in Glasgow, Scotland. But Square Enix has the advantage of being able to produce incredible pre-rendered works in their own in-house animation studio. Square Enix Visual Works. These are industry leaders, with the studio built in a way that they can invite game directors to explain their vision and then create something fantastic from that. Not only are they a phenomenal studio in terms of creativity, but in terms of technology as well, with stunningly detailed environments and accomplished motion capture work. You can really get a sense of that in the recently revealed Final Fantasy VII Remake opening that they created. But for 14 fans, this is a team that specialises in larger-than-life combats, incredible vistas, and realistic motion that never abandons its artistic influences. But it wasn't always like that. Visual Works cutscenes are the result of decades of trials and overwhelming error. They started out as a group of budding CG artists on Final Fantasy VII, ambitiously creating a whole bunch of cutscenes for the game, and this ambition continued, with Square Enix opting to create a film titled Final Fantasy The Spirits Within, with super realistic graphics. They even set up an entire studio in Hawaii for it, and they didn't even bother to apply for local grants. They absolutely believed in hyper-realism as the future of animation.
Nothing you've seen, nothing you've experienced can prepare you.
Look out!
For where the next evolution in reality will take you.
And it flopped. Hard. The investment in Square Pictures wasn't just for one film, but was meant to be an entirely new venture for the company alongside games. The team's obsession with realism has been noted as one of the reasons for the film's lack of appeal, and it's this failure that marks Visual Works' current direction. Kazuyuki Ikumori made sure of that. He started out his career as a pixel artist at Square Enix before learning CG for Final Fantasy VII and VIII, where he was involved in the backgrounds. From Final Fantasy X-2, he's been asked to direct the cutscenes for several Final Fantasy games, and in 2008 he was made Chief Creative Director and General Manager of the Visual Works subsidiary. As a Square Enix CG artist, he'd survived the layoffs that surrounded the Spirits Within and seen how the company had to entirely reform just to keep on moving. And so when speaking about the current direction for the Visual Works team, he says, "We learned from the Spirits Within and made sure not to repeat history, so we went with the opposite direction of Square Pictures." This has meant that while they've worked to make some elements realistic, they don't see it as a crutch. In the words of Final Fantasy XV, it's a fantasy based on reality. Ikumori believes that CG should be a balance between technology and art, and you can absolutely see that in his work. Ikumori has directed all of the Final Fantasy XIV trailers himself, and you can see his philosophy throughout. For example, these are excellent realistic run animations with an immersive shaky POV camera, but as soon as they reach the Warrior of Light, the rules of time and space go out of the window and are replaced with the golden rule of what would be cool. A Visual Works trailer or cutscene is fairly straightforward in regards to CG creation. First, the game's director or a producer will write a script of all the sort of things that will happen in the video. Sometimes they'll have reference materials, but sometimes they don't, and the Visual Works team will have to find their own. From here, they will start brainstorming, creating concept art, and eventually a storyboard. And now they split off into teams: an animation team, an asset team, and a VFX team. First, the animation team will create a pre-visualization, giving everyone a good idea of what's going on. Meanwhile, the asset team are working on creating the objects and backgrounds to fill scenes, as well as modeling and rigging the characters ready to be animated. Part of the animation team's work is also motion capture. Animators at Visual Works have full access to the motion capture studio, and in most cases, they will perform themselves. This means that an animator can be working on a scene, go to the motion capture studio, do some moves, and then go back up and tweak that motion capture data. Although Visual Works doesn't adhere too closely to reality, so the motion capture data is used more as a base than a representation of the final product. And of course, not all scenes use motion capture. Once animation is completed, the VFX team will take over and complete the trailer or cutscene. This is the part where it becomes recognizable as a Visual Works piece. The team will composite layers together, bring in assets, and create the lighting and visual effects. A special focus is always given to the characters and game worlds that represent these IP. So for instance, Final Fantasy XIV fans care a lot about the worlds and costumes, so you'll see a lot of special attention paid to them. And this leads us straight into the relationship between Ikumori and Final Fantasy XIV director Naoki Yoshida, both of whom are people who strive for coolness in their work, but find each other both impressing and annoying at the same time. And that's kind of ideal. The goal for an expansion trailer is twofold. It must show off some of what we can expect to see, including new areas, mechanics, and perhaps a job or two, while also being cinematically exciting. These will form the main part of the marketing push for each expansion, hoping to grow a player base that's already more than 18 million. It's not just the trailer as well. The assets from this will often be used for marketing materials and posters that need to look good enough to be displayed on large billboards and trucks. It's a lot of pressure to get right. This process starts about a year off from the release of the trailer. Because this process is so early in development, it relies on these two constantly communicating and arguing their creative vision. And things can change. The dragons in the teaser trailer for Heavensward were all white, but after pretty much everything was already done and they were getting ready to release the full version, Yoshida rocks up and asks them to change all the dragons to red. It's stuff like this that Ikumori refers to as a headache, but Yoshida is far from the only person who does this. He once talked about how when developers come to Visual Works, there's often very little reference material and rarely any explanation of how magic systems work. When he asks for more details, he finds that he's often told, just make something that looks cool. And then the developers will use Visual Works' ideas in the final game. It is part of the job though, and thankfully the Visual Works team are creative enough to get it done anyways. For instance, the first Final Fantasy XIV trailer has players fight a Morbol together. In the script, this was just players fight a monster, so Ikumori had a lot of creative freedom. Likewise, the script for A Realm Reborn's End of an Era trailer just states, call upon the power of the 12 and attempt to seal Bahamut again. So Visual Works had to come up with this elaborate magic circle, as well as create this barrier with 37 separate VFX layers based on simple sentences. The results are trailers that are watched and enjoyed by millions of people all over the world, and stand as a testament to the skill and creativity of Visual Works, the Final Fantasy XIV team, and composer Masayoshi Solken as well, who works tirelessly to make sure these scenes resonate musically. Final Fantasy XIV has a bright future, and it's a future that will look and sound fantastic. Thanks for watching The Canipa Effect. I'd like to give a special thank you to all of these viewers for supporting the channel. In particular, I'd like to thank Austin Hardwick, Chariot Wheel, Dedameat, Frogkun, Jacob Bosley, GR Pictures, Mike Tamborelli, my own mother, Nolan Soga, Shishi, and that you are an artist. If you'd like to join them in supporting the channel, please visit patreon.com/thecanipa effect.